Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another session with us at NTEEP, fostering a dynamic ecosystem that drives growth. Today's session is titled Fundraising and Investment Readiness, and taking us on this topic is Mr. AJ Smart. Mr. AJ Smart is a visionary leader, he's a tech strategist and a humanitarian. He's also the founder of NTEP and he's the CEO of Nonpro Technologies. With a strong background in as an IT consultant, Mr. AJ is passionate about using technology to drive meaningful change. Also, over the years, he's built a solid reputation for helping organizations embrace digital transformation through innovative solutions and strategic insights. But what truly sets him apart is his deep commitment to making a positive impact, not just in the business world, but also in the society at large. Let's welcome Mr. AJ. Mr. AJ, over to you.
Thank you very much, Desi. Good morning, everyone. Hope you are doing good today. This is an important topic as far as business is concerned. So, without wasting too much of your time, let's get to it. So, fundraising and investment readiness is one thing to want investment. It's another thing entirely whether your business is ready for investment. And if it's ready for investment, what kind of investment, of course, you are looking for. That's another thing. So basically, the point here is that before you go on to seek for investment, make sure that your business is prepared and ready for investment, right? So uh, let's get to it. So basically, the first question is why fundraising matters. Why is it important? So we'll start with a few key points. The first key point is as far as business is concerned, capital foils growth. Very, very important. As an African startup, which of course we know that most African startups often face capital constraints, of course. This is usually due to limited local funding, and of course some of the challenges highlighted by investors. So this, in a nutshell, has already highlight why you need or your business need funding, because without capital, I remember instances where we were discussing with a friend, and he said, as far as business is concerned, it's not all about money. And I know most of you must have heard this phrase, it's not all about money. Now, not to misunderstand that phrase, not all about money, to say that you don't need money for your business, for your startups. So it is important because funding enables product development. If you will need money maybe to buy raw materials, very, very important. You will need money, if, for example, if you are a farmer, you might need money for labor, you may need money for pesticide and all of that. You need money basically to enable product development, market expansion, of course. Let's say, for example, you start as a solo um, preneur, and let me use as self-employed, where you offer your service in exchange, you get paid. Over time, you want to become an entrepreneur and begin to build a team, right? So you definitely need funding. You need money. So that is how important uh, funding is. It foils product development, market expansion, hiring. Of course, you need a great team, and if you don't have the resources to hire as many qualified team members as you can, then this would definitely be a challenge, right? So let's move on to the next point. Uh, in an African context, as an example, in 2024, African startups raised over 5 billion US dollars. Now, the reason I highlighted this point is although we understand the challenges which we'll be discussing in the course of this session, but let's also keep in mind that the opportunities are really there. There are people who are interested in investing on the continent. Um, so there is definitely a market, and so there are opportunities. There are people, there are investors that are willing to invest in the markets. Now, this third most important why impact, right? Uh, Beyond the show, of course, because the point I was trying to highlight when it comes to the context is the fact that investors are interested in investing in Africa, just so you understand the context. That is what I was trying to highlight there. Then the second or the third is impact, right? So funding startups create jobs, right, and solve local problems. Now, let's give an example in the case of employment, which would be part of the impacts, of course, of funding, would be that in the case where you are self-employed, you are able to provide employment for yourself, which would probably fit one or two families, right? Maybe you have dependents like an extended family, but when you have funding, you are able to employ a workforce providing employment which eventually reduce the poverty rate in your community and eventually your country and Africa at large. So the impact is also another why. So let's wrap this point up. The first point why funding is very, very important is that for your business as an African startup, capital foils growth, it foils expansion, it foils market expansion, of course, it foils hiring because to build a team, you need um, funding, you need resources in time of financial resources. Now, as an African, for most people, one of the reasons that hinder us is that we feel disadvantaged, and that is why I decided to highlight this context, right, from the African context where there are investors, there is growing interest, right, for investors, as far as investors are concerned, to invest in Africa because it's still a green market, it's still a virgin market. As such, there are a lot of opportunities. Then finally, on that note, is of course impact, right? Because it's a virgin market, it means there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot that need to be done. Like there is high rate of unemployment, and to relate it to this topic, I did already mention that you operating alone, you will not be able to reduce poverty in your community, your country. But with funding, you are able to hire more people, which automatically fits more people in your community because you've hired more people and eventually reduce unemployment and result to uh, reducing rate of poverty, whether it's in your community or the country or Africa at large. Now, next, what we'll be looking at is the African investment landscape, right? The African investment landscape, because this is an African entrepreneurship platform. So we want to really understand what are the challenges, the opportunities, and also the investors, the type of investment available as far as um, African investment landscape is concerned. So let's start up with key investors, right? So as when it comes to looking for investment in Africa, you can look out from VCs. These are ventures capitalists seek seeking high growth startups. You can also go for impacts funding, of course, who prioritize social impacts, as I talked about, unemployment, climate change. If you have that kind of sort of product or service, of course. Then we have angel investors who would usually invest in small startups, mostly like yourself, for most of us that are here, and of course, would also offer you mentorship. Now, I need to emphasize on how important um, mentorship is as far as investment is concerned. I have met several people, and coming from I don't like to use the term disadvantaged society because I believe that the term development is relative. And so I would say, coming from a continent that is viewed, not that I believe it, as a disadvantage in terms of economic development, one thing that I've learned is that most of the startups will just come to you and say, "I need money," right? And one thing we don't pay attention to, very, very important, is what exactly is the money for? What do I really need? Actually, that's what I want to start with. What do I really need at that point? Because the topic is preparing for investment. So, what exactly do you really need at that point? And I'll give you a practical example. So, if your business is at a point where you need a mentor, then it's not funding you need. You may actually need a mentor who would actually help you understand the market, understand, give you some practical strategies. Then, over time, you may even realize that you can actually sell your service or your product, generate revenue from it, and put it back into your business, just to be clear. Because most of the investment you are going to look for, in most cases, you have to pay back with interest, right? So if you go out looking for investment when you are not ready for investment, then you are sure. That is why most people is either the investor eventually takes over the business, buy you out, or in most cases you incur um, of course, expense, you incur liability that you have to find money elsewhere, look for money elsewhere to pay off. So the main point is that if your business is small, you ask me what kind of investment do I think is recommended, I'll probably say go for the angel investors. And when you go there, don't just look for the money, ask for mentorship as well. Ask them, get them to get involved. So this will really help you moving forward. The next key is we can look at the sectors that are very, very hot in terms of investment, yeah, as far as um, this is concerned, right? So we can look at fintechs, which is currently rated over 45% funding, attracting agriculture, agri-tech, of course, health tech, and logistics, right? So because of the after, which of course is still in progress, logistics is one of the most. I don't know if most startups have really paid attention. I've seen large corporations tapping into logistics across Africa, but not startups as far as I've seen. But that particular sector is very, very lucrative. And not only that, it has a future because connecting Africa means moving people and goods, right? So whether it's parcel, whether it's people you are moving, it's a very, very, the more we get connected, the more demand that would increase definitely. So these are major key sectors, the hot sectors as I call them: financial inclusion, food security. These are things you look at which will eventually shape your decision as which sector you should look at. Now, Africa needs to be self-reliant as far as security, food security is concerned, not to confuse the two. That's why I say security, food security, whether it's financial security or just security generally. Now, to achieve that, system has to be built, whether is building data farms like data centers, whether is finding ways to secure data locally, or just building small companies that will rely on locally produce raw materials or infrastructure that we can easily account for, just to um, put that in perspective. So next is the challenges, right? Um, there are definitely challenges as far as the African ecosystem is concerned, right? We know we have limited local venture capitalists. We have, of course, the high risks. There is a perception of a high risk investment, which has already also fueled by political um, unrest and all of that across Africa. uh, that said, all developed countries, as we see them today, we are also, in fact, some of them worse than Africa is. But some people decided to take the risks anyway. And so there are people that are willing to invest in Africa, even though there are challenges. And I will be talking about that in a bit. We also understand the currency volatility, for example, whether you're talking about the naira in Nigeria, for example, devaluation and a whole lot. So these are some of the challenges. It's very, very important to prepare this. I'm not telling you this to tell you that it's not possible to get investment. In fact, it's very, very possible. But you need to know the challenges so that you can know how to navigate uh, the challenges. So the next one we are going to be looking at is the opportunities. And as I've said earlier, there is growing interest from around the globe, global VCs and diasporas. One important and very easy, by the way to get funding, which most people don't talk about for your business, is to tap into the diaspora's investors. So most people that lives abroad are always seeking out for a trusted business or partner to work with. If you are able to build, that is why it's important to build traction before you go for investment. And I'll be talking about this in a bit. So it's very, very important to build traction, build reputation, build trust. And this is not just about your personal trust, like personal branding. No, beyond that, you need to be able to build traction, whether it's a team or whether it's a product. We'll talk about that in a bit, but um, that is one way you can easily generate funds, and in most cases with low interest, by the way. So let's move on to the next part of this session, and we'll be discussing uh, the major question of the day. And the question is, are you ready? Are you ready for investment? Are you investment ready? Like, is your business ready for investment? You need to ask yourself that question, and that is what I was actually talking about. So the key takeaway point here is that traction, right? Show evidence of demand for your service or product. For example, I'm a farmer, I am a technopreneur, right? And before going into any business, for example, I started a rice farming last year, which of course we are now increasing the size from this year. And before starting that, I had to look at the market. And of course, there is demand because we consume in Nigeria alone, for example, we consume a lot of foreign rice coming into the country because there is always this perception that we cannot meet up with demand. Now, I can produce the local rice, and there are farmers, by the way, like that who produce the rice, and at the end of the day, they sell it very cheap because they don't even know where to take the rice to. But I figured that I can easily find a partner to process the rice locally, package it, and sell it within Nigeria, and that will be fine. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you need to show evidence. Now, if I am going out to look for investment, before I start talking about asking people who is interested in, um, my farm, I had to at least farm, right? I had to at least build something. So evidence is very, very important. Uh, you can, in the case where you don't have products yet, you can actually talk about the demand. You can come up with a proper research that shows that there is demand for the product. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think we discussed this on business planning because it's part of where you talk about the market size and, of course, demand. You look at all that, you group, you segment your market and all of that. This would eventually give us perspective, give your investors perspective as whether there is demand for the kind of product or the sector entirely if there is high demand. Now, projects, whether it's yearly, monthly revenue, do that. But again, let me mention this, that when it comes to seeking for investment, I was watching a clip which made me develop a habit of responding to comments or posts on Lions Den, because I've learned a lot as far as most of my Africans startup seeking for investment is concerned. I've learned a lot just watching them pitch their ideas, and one thing I got to learn is that most people are not ready for investment. They just thought, yeah, like there is poverty everywhere, so I can just outsmart the investor. But please understand that most of these investors are not called sharks or lions for nothing. They know where you come from. They have met hundreds of other people. In fact, their own business idea, when they started with a lot of other people who had promising ideas like them but fell off the road. So they know the journey. They have seen a lot of competitors fall off. They have crushed a lot of competitors. So when you come to them, you would have to show attraction. You would have to show that you are ready for investment, not just because you are looking for money to get away from your struggles. I know a lot of people don't even see that, and I always say one of the most difficult things to do is to tell yourself something that might not necessarily be true and actually believe it. It's more dangerous that way. So I have learned to be humble as far as business is concerned, especially when seeking for investment. It's important to admit the challenges, get help if you need it, get a professional to talk to, but avoid getting a professional to just draft document for you so you can go get money. The reason is you are not helping yourself, because at the end of the day, the business is already project to fail, and so it's not going to help you, and it's not going to help your investor either. But at the end of the day, your investor is not really losing because you would have to look for that money to pay it off. Just to mention that. Now, the next thing is team. Investors bet on people because people drive, they are the driving force behind. And I will give you an example, right? In Africa, it's not like Africa cannot become, I'm telling you that if the mentality in Africa is reset, just 5% reset, for Africans to believe in themselves that they can build Africa. We'll build Africa within less than a year. Believe me, this is no joke. We can build Africa within less than a year, right? But because the society already have, which is the human resource, does not believe in themselves in the system, they completely cannot do it. No wonder you would find them best professors, best technicians, best doctors all over the world except in Africa. Best business tycoons across the globe except in Africa. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is simple. The team, the human resource, the team behind your business is very, very important. Once that, if you get that wrong, then forget about all that. So even if you don't have enough traction, if your investor look at your team and believe that you can deliver, then most of them will reach stage, right? They will reach stage. So, but not this is not to say that traction is not important. In fact, it's the number one. But your team also is very, very key. So work hard to make sure you put a team together with proven record, whether it's serving in other companies, personal experience, working in the industry as a farmer. Before I started commercial farming, I've been a farmer all my life. I was born a farmer, right? In IT, for example, before I go into starting non-fraud technologies in 2020, I have been in IT for, I think, for more than, I think, 7 years. So if I am going out, when I go out to seek funding, when I'm talking about non-pro technologies, believe me, I no longer need a paper. I can pitch and actually compose a pitch deck without looking at anything because I know how long I've invested in the process. Each step I did it. I only consult professionals to get professional directions and opinions, which is also very, very important. So the point is that your team is very, very crucial. Make sure to have a good team with different backgrounds. If you are built setting up a farm, for example, or an IT, or let's say a salon, right, or a spa, you actually want to make sure you have a professional therapist for a spa. You also want to make sure that you have an accountant because when you are making money, someone has to account for, the expenses so that we don't mismanage the funds. You want to also have a legal, whether it's a part time. It's very, very important so you don't um, just run your business without proper documentation or compliance. We would be having session on compliance, and I know you will learn more about that as we progress. And also pitching, we'll get there anyway. So the next thing is we'll talk about problem and solution. There is one thing I believe in as far as an entrepreneur. For you to qualify to be addressed as an entrepreneur by me, I don't know about other people, then you would have to identify a problem and you're able to create a solution. I'm not asking you to just copy paste. In fact, I've seen people who encourage people to copy paste, and I always tell people that one of the reasons we are finding it difficult to grow in Africa is because of copy paste. And I always ask my fellow comrades, who will leave the original version of what you have to come for the photocopy? Please ask yourself that. If we want to contribute to the global community, we'll have to develop, we'll have to invent something original, something they can actually benefit from, not always copy from them. And this is very, very important for startups. So when it comes to ideas, I would love to see you clearly define a problem that is unique to the African perspective, a problem that is unique to your community, a problem that is unique to your country, a problem that is unique to the African community. And then once you identify, and there are a lot of them. I always say that thank God there are a lot of problems in Africa, and I know most of the Africans just look at me and like, why are you thanking God? We are so religious, which is perfect. It's okay. But you see, if we don't have problems, what developed, whether it's North America, Asia, um, East Asia, or Europe today, is because of the challenges. It's the problems that they face that makes them creative, right? So I don't. We don't have to get to a point where we don't see our challenges as a disadvantage, but opportunities, and begin to look for a way to solve them, right? If I have, um, we are working on a project, right? A fintech project, and we're actually taking a totally different approach as far as cross-border money transfer is concerned across Africa, you know. And the reason is because I was looking to, uh, you know, transfer money relating to business, and I realized that most of the cross-border money transfers are completely either personal, and if you want to move money that is business, then you have a lot of challenges. So what happens to a digital nomad? What if you run business in other countries, right? Or maybe you're a freelancer who um, works using your business name, then you would have to be collecting that money to your personal account. The problem with that is that over time, policies change, and you get to a point where maybe a small issues happen with your business, and auditors comes in and they want to check all that, and they realize that some of the money comes into your personal account. And worse, maybe you have a political rival. These things happen, so we can't shy away from them. And then you get into trouble because as little as that is, so that is actually a problem. And for me, that was personal to me. And I believe that so many other African startups, digital nomads across the globe are suffering from this challenge. What do I do? Look for a solution, and we're already working on one. This is a problem unique to Africa identified. The solution, of course, also unique to that particular problem. So that is very, very important um, point to look at. Then next, let's look at the market opportunity. I've said this before. You need to be able to prove the opportunities available. And the example I just gave you is one, because if you can prove that there is actually a problem and you're able to prove that you can provide a solution, then once you identify a genuine problem, then you have already proved a market. It's very, very easy to prove a market. So that is that as far as if you are ready. So a simple recap as far as this is concerned would be: place, build traction. Number one, place, build a sophisticated team. Number two, number three, identify a problem and ensure to have a solution, right? Next, ensure to have a market opportunity. It's one thing to just think that because the problem is as an opportunity, but actually you need to prove that you can actually address the problem. We have seen um, large number of startups who actually genuinely identify problems and thought that their solutions could address it, but that never happened. So it's very, very important to make sure that you your opportunity has a market size, right? So next we would be looking at crafting a winning pitch deck, right? Um, you see, to get investment, you definitely have to pitch your business. In most cases, this start with a an elevator pitch, the 60-second pitch, and then in this case, the reason I choose a pitch deck is because we are not discussing pitching today. There is a storytelling and pitching session coming up. You're going to learn in details how to prepare a pitch and all of that. That session is coming up. But in the meantime, we'll be looking at crafting a winning pitch deck. Uh, I mean, everybody can prepare a pitch, and I've read a lot of pitch deck, and I'm like, no, now the way we say it here in Nigeria. Now, here are a few key points to consider when doing that. So, the structure of your pitch deck should be 10 to 12 slides. I recommend that, right? Which will cover the problem, the solution, the market size, business model, traction, team, composition, right? The competition, financials, that is your projection, And if you have any financial traction, please mention it. And also the call to action, which is the ask. What are you asking for? Also very, very important. So the structure, followed, of course, by clarity. You need to use simple language. And this is where it becomes very, very interesting as far as Africa is concerned. You see, for most of us, speaking good English with funny, as we always make fun of it here in Nigeria and most part of Africa, makes us feel so educated. And it's funny how you will later find out that we have so many people who can speak good English and don't know what they are doing. Now, in business, you have to be careful when using jargons, and I'm going to tell you this. So, let's say that your target audience for your product includes secondary school leavers, and in fact, school dropouts and people who did not go to school at all. And of course, also professionals in the case of food produce. And I'm just giving an example because I want you to understand how important it is to communicate and not just use jargons. In the case of IT, for example, so when it comes to investment now, which since this is crafting a winning pitch deck, let's use IT. It's very, very, I'll call it very, very, makes you look very nice, professional, and in some cases sexy to use jargons. It makes you feel good as an IT, I'll be honest with you. But I've learned to use simple terms because in most cases, people who will be interested in investing in your business cannot relate to what you're talking about. And if you give them the wrong impression about your business by speaking jargons that they didn't really understand what it means and they opt to invest in your business, you are going to have a problem in the process, especially if they would have to take equity in your business, right? Because they would have to work with you. Not only that, maybe your business is already built to fail, but because you use jargon, they had no idea what you were talking about, and they just thought, "Wow, this is good," because I'm proud of our African, mentality where we appreciate English so much. And I know people who would be happy to just invest because, right, I know not many of them, but I know some because they will believe that, yeah, you know what you're doing just because of the jargon. So please, whether it's health, tech, whether it's agri-tech, whether it's fintech, whether it's just general of any software or sector at all, whether it's a spa, service business, production, rice processing, when crafting your pitch deck, please use simple language. That's why I highlighted this. Avoid jargons. Use a language that a layman can relate to. Because at the end of the day, you are trying to pass a message, you are trying to communicate. You are not trying to impress anyone by speaking English or jargons. Please communicate clearly, pass a message. That is very, very important. Beyond just seeking investment, business generally, I always advise people when you are communicating your idea or your business or pitching a product, always try to communicate, because if the receiver does not is not able to decode your message, then the whole instance of communication has already been defeated. So please ensure to communicate your um, slide properly. Again, I say we connect farmers, right, to buyers. That's simple. Versus we leverage agri-tech synergies. Just take a look at that. We connect farmers to buyers. It's as simple as that, right? So I had to give that example so you understand what I'm talking about. Because of time, I know we're already running out of time, so I will just rush this so we can. So next is local context, highlight African challenges. What we are trying to do here at NTEEP is to raise proper African indigenous startups that will actually build sophisticated businesses that would have impact not just in Africa, but also impact the world with our own way of life, our own products, our own. This would give a fresh perspective to who we are and all of that. So please, a local context, because giving a local context helps you to relate to your business. And that is why people who don't look, I want you to use India and China as an example. So when you are doing a business that you understand the most, what is your business with Apple when you don't have an apple tree behind your backyard? When you have banana at your backyard that you can easily process the flour, why are you trying to process apple fruit that you have to import? I'm just giving you a clear example, and that is how many of us think. Focus on materials challenges that have the raw materials available within your community. In most cases, to solve this problem, you don't have to start looking for foreign currencies to solve this problem. And I hope that helped. So then, of course, the ask, you need to be specific about what you're asking, whether you need just money, whether you need money, and also um, uh, mentorship, of course. Now, financial preparedness is very, very important to prepare, right? Build realistic 3 to 5 years projection, revenue cost, breakdown, even points. Very, very important. Next is unit economy. Show profitability potentials, right? For example, customer acquisition cost. Very, very important. Now, compliance is also key. I realize that most of the challenges, most businesses across the continent, we easily ignore compliance until we grow to that extent that is too much for us to bear, and we now start incurring consequences of that attitude. So it's very, very important. And in the case of investment, please keep in mind the investor is going to look at this. So make sure to ensure that you look at legal, whether it's documentation, tax compliance, registration, etc. Now, do the due diligence, do that. Be ready within your financial contracts and all your IPs documentation. Very, very important. Now, next, building investors relationship. Now, at this point where you are, the next question you'll be asking is, where do you start, right? Leverage on network. There are network across Africa. There is always one event or the other. Just please, if you are completely as broke as anyone, you don't have to have much money to attend network. There are free networking events that you will find that the speakers are investors. And I'll give you an example. NTEEP, for example, a large, if you really read through the profiles of most of our speakers, these are speakers that are not, some of them are judges, some of them are investors, not just in Africa, but in the US, UK, and across the globe. So leverage on networking, whether it's online or offline, this will really go a long way to help. So attend events like, of course. Now we have warm intros, leverage accelerators, CC hubs, and all of that as an example. Like Intep, I've already used this. Now follow up, share updates, very, very important. New client, product launch, keep up to date. Next one is local and global target. um, you can always check out whether local or international investors that got interest. I don't just go random. That's why I always say know your investor, meaning before you just jump to an organization to ask for investment, please make sure to know whether they are interested in investing in uh, your type of business or your area. Next is over promising. I wish we had time. This is where most of us get it from. The fact that, don't think that by inflicting your projections will means get more money. Investors will eventually spot on this. So please take to be realistic. Weak team. I've already talked about this. Build a proper team. These are common pitfalls to avoid. Ignoring context. I've always said address a problem, whether it's your community, gender related, just put context to it. Very, very important. poor storytelling, and the pitching section segment will address this particular part. Now, here we are going to be looking at the success stories. Of course, these are some examples who have raised, so you know that it's possible. Flutterwave, Adela, of course, Nkopa, and the rest of them. Lesson is a strong traction, clear impact, and of course, uh, global appeal win funding. That is just what I wanted you to understand there. Then action plan step one, refine your business model and pitch deck. Step two, build traction. Again, I keep repeating that. Step three, join accelerators. Please find network, whether it's off or online. Leverage on the NTEEP community. You never know who you can join. You can meet there. Step four, prepare for due diligence. Very, very important. On that note, I know we don't have much time. I really wish we had enough time so I can dive deeper into this one after the other. But I'll be taking questions briefly. Uh, the few minutes we currently, I think we have 11 minutes or so, then we'll be wrapping up the session.
Thank you, Mr. AJ. Indeed, 1 hour window is a very short time for this topic. But for this short time, I
Yes.
had a lot of take homes and we've gotten positive feedbacks from the participants. So thank you once again. Currently, we'll be moving over to the Q&A segment. Our first question is from Master Empowering Platform. And the question is, how can African startup balance financial sustainability with social responsibility? That's the A part of the question. Did you get that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that when it comes to corporate social responsibility, I believe that's what you were talking about. I don't really see it as, I know most people uh, want to wait to have so much to be able to do that, but it's simply giving a little back to the society or the community. So you don't have to have too much. It can be as little as cleaning. It can be as little as, because your company produces a kind of product or provides service that customers will eventually later leave a lot of waste. It can be as little as keeping the environment clean. Maybe in a weekend, you just organize your staff and a few volunteers to go around picking up, making sure making sure that the environment is clean. So to answer your question, I think one way, once you have investment, Africa offers a lot of opportunities. So if you are able to grow and you have investment and you are able to make good profit, which I know a lot of businesses do, then corporate social responsibility should not be a struggle. However, if you are not able to make that much and you are still interested in doing that, you don't have to always wait until you have cash to do that. You can always come up with programs, whether it's your staff going out on a awareness campaign. These are all part of corporate social responsibility. I hope I'm able to answer that question. Jessica.
I believe so. The B part of the question is, and in which ways do cultural and societal expectations shape fundraising strategies in African context?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had already mentioned political unrest. I've also mentioned, I think I didn't. So I think that politics from on an African context, security, when it comes to cultural, I think that that should not really. I don't know if you are asking based on a disadvantage, the effect, or you are asking how that. I think that our way of life presents a lot of opportunities. If we can tap into developing our way of life, right? And so I think that that present opportunities to investors, right? Who, for example, the general cultural way of life of an African has not really been tapped in, whether it's to teach it in schools, universities. No, we don't have all of that. Just imagine education, for example. If we're able to integrate our way of life into our educational system, then I know that there are a lot of investors who will be willing to invest into that. Now, your question probably relates to when I say on an African context. This is because it's easy when your problem is unique to a community, a segment, part, a group of people. It makes it easy to quantify it. And in this case, since we are talking about African entrepreneurs, hence the need to use that context. So, to answer your question, it presents opportunities because if you present, if you are able to tap into the untapped African way of life and monetize it by making them how do I put, developed business ideas out of it, I know that that will really present opportunities that entrepreneurs, investors will be willing to invest in, especially impact investors. Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. AJ, for that answer. Another question from Mr. Blackson is, what strategies would you recommend for a startup that doesn't have traction yet but seek funding?
Yeah, honestly, I've said this before. We'll have to get to a point where we are honest with ourselves. If what I am looking for is self employed, I need money to solve my immediate problem, I have no business with seeking investment. I have to be honest with you. Because, in fact, you have to at least be sort of self sufficient to some extent before you start seeking for investment for a business. Um, because so that when the money comes, you don't start taking out immediately and start spending it on yourself. So if you don't have traction, then I would say please get a professional. I don't want to tell you that if you don't have traction, but when I say traction, I'm not just talking about that you must have something that you have done. Traction could be a team you put together. This could also be market projection, but make sure that this is viable, is quantifiable, is achievable based on your projection. You're able to convince the investor that based on the team I've put together, based on the problem I've identified, based on the market size, based on the units, I would be able to achieve this, right? And make this turnover. Now, that can be attraction because you have a team. The team is a part of your attraction. So this is very, very important. However, if you don't have any of this and you feel like you want to start a business and you just need investment, I'll fall back to my native Nigerian English and say, I tell God, beg you, leave money alone. Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. AJ. Another question is it advisable to give away equity to your investors?
Absolutely. In fact, for me, I don't know about others, but for me, I'm a fan of giving out equity. That's what I want to do. I'm not really a fan of just give me money because when you give me money, you leave me with all the responsibility. Now, part of the clause is I always attach to giving equity in my business is that you would have to take a stake, like you would have to be part of the business operational. And before choosing investor that I will give equity, I want to actually check your background. Now, there are a few things I'm going to look for, right? Number one is what opportunities does your experience or your network present? I can actually bring in a novice into IT. Let's say that I'm setting up a data farm or for our fintech app, for example. We can actually onboard an investor with totally no IT or finance background. But because the person has a network that will provide, for example, media. Maybe the person is a media personnel, and you know that by getting the person on board, as far as advertising and marketing is concerned, it will be free of charge, like without even asking, right? So these are some of the things you need to look at. And then another thing is, I usually like a combination. That's what I advise. I like a combination of two different and give them aggregate based on. So if I plan to give up, like say, 20% equity in my company, what I'll probably do is give out either 515 or 1010 with different interests, meaning my interests, like what is in it for me from the person. This could be the person is a popular person in the society, the other person has more experience in running when it comes to financial services. So, yes, it's advisable, but please don't go and give up your, because once you give up 50% equity, just know that the business is now like, it's like co-funding sort of, and understand that the person has more experience than you. So, it's advisable, but be strategic about it and be selfish about it. But don't be um, hypocritic. Sorry to use the term, but it means be selfish doesn't mean that you should be thinking that you want to cheat the other person. No, it means put yourself first. Not just because, one mistake we make is just because you are looking for money, you go out as if you are begging the investor. No, and that usually happens because we are not sure whether we would be able to give back that money. At the same time, remember to be humble enough. So it is striking a balance that is always very, very important. In a nutshell, Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. AJ. The next question is from Mr. Innocent, and the question is, in case you haven't gotten any funding yet, how do you show your investors that you have been using your funds to run operations in your startup and convince them that you need help?
Well, traction again. Your financial breakdown should show that. That is why it's important to separate your business money from your personal expenses. You should have proper accounting. How you a ledger for your, running your business entry, expense, and of course incomes, sales. Once you have proper business operations that can show your sales, can show at the end of the day your a statement, right? Not just bank statement, but also, of course, financial statement that is correct. Investors will not have problem. In fact, most investors will be happy to invest in you when you don't have any investment from anybody yet, right? Maybe the first investment you had is crowdfunding or just your savings. They will be more interested in investing in you, especially if you can show traction working with your own funds. So I hope I answered that question, Jessica.
I believe so. Thank you, Mr. AJ. The next question is from Agromet, and the question is, how can you attract team members when you're not financially strong and you are living in a community with individuals that hardly believe on future benefits rather than instant benefits?
Well, sound like, is that in Nigerian? Because it sounds like that. Um,
Um,
I know that most communities in Africa generally, but don't blame them. You see, I always say that it's you that God's, whether you believe in God or not, regardless of your religion, you were created. So it's you that conceived or this vision was given to, right? Whether it's by deity or whatever you believe in. And you don't expect everybody to see the destination or to see it the way you see it. In fact, whether you're talking about aeroplane which just passed now, or whether you're talking about light bulb, this power we are using, or is a vehicle, there were a lot of naysayers, right? So when it comes to relating that to building a team, you don't build a team by begging people to join you to build a team. You build a team by selecting, you would even the team to start with, you will still have to prove to your team that your idea would generate good money for them. Before, a good way to do this, if you don't have money at all and you are starting, then get a co-founder. If you have a genuine idea, get a co-founder who either has money And if they don't, they should be able to have some sort of traction that will fine tune the idea to build a team around it. So if you have a co-founder who will complement your own skills, then you already have a team. This team doesn't have to be big. It can be a team of two. That is if your idea is pretty new, you have not started anything at all. So but the point is that you need to make sure that you are solid, your solution is solid, and in relation to a team, you need to make sure that you are part of the team. So tell the investor how experienced, how well you understand the problem, and how you and your partner, or maybe just you yourself, it's possible you are, depends on the type of business, if it's a service, right? But in most cases, you might need to at least have a few people around. I think that you asked that question because you were thinking about employing people. So if you are seeking for investment, then you will have to list a list of people who work in key um, department. So the question you just asked might not completely be relevant to that anymore, because if you are submitting a pitch deck, then you will have to put a team together. This team, you don't have to start paying them. You just have to vet them, put their names. By the time you get investment, you call them to work. Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. AJ. Another question from Mr. Brown is, how can one show traction in a pre-revenue startup?
I'm not sure what you mean pre-revenue, because that sounds like a question I just answered. If pre-revenue means that you have not been able to make sales, then you would be able to provide a prototype. You'll be able to provide a team. I just talked about that. You should be able to provide projection, market size. All these things can add up to convince an investor that you are ready. But please, you need to first identify what type of investor will be interested in investing in idea stage as startups. Not all investors invest in such uh, ventures capitalists, for example. So you need to make sure to actually make check to be sure that where you are presenting your idea, um, fund idea stage. Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. AJ. Due to time, we'll be taking our last question from Michael. And the question is, what is more important in fundraising between a pitch deck and a business plan?
I'm happy you asked. I think someone asked this question in one of our sessions. I had joined. I was actually just watching. So it's like a man asking a counselor, what is more important, children or wife in marriage? It's the same thing. The point is that you need both, because it's a matter of getting married first, and then when you have a wife, then you start looking for children, right? So for you to even start a business that you're already talking about, developing a pitch deck for investment, you should have a business plan, because part of the document that the investor is going to ask for is your business plan. They want to see it. That is where your projection is going to be. It's not in the details. Projection is not going to be on your pitch deck. And not only that, this is also going to contain how you intend to run the business, right? So the mission, the vision, that is where do you that is a vision. Where do you see the company achieving the mission? How do you intend to achieve it? Like, you need to put this, all are included in the business plan, right? But when it comes to the pitch deck, it's a brief overview of this and focus on investment. But the other one is a business plan, which means it's going to contain details both on market size, both on financial projection, both on summary of the business, whether it's staffing, market size. Of course, it also talk about the product or service, sales projection, financial projection. All this is going to be captured, and also source of funding. So even this particular investment you are looking for ought to would have been captured in your business plan, that you are going to look for this kind of investment from either ventures capitalists. You need to mention that already in your business plan. So think of the pitch deck as the child in your marriage, and then the um, think of the business plan as the wife or the husband, right? So you can't do without the other. So please don't make a mistake. I see people asking which is important. All are important, and in fact, one cannot do without the other. Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. AJ, once again for that wonderful session and for answering our questions. If to our viewers, if you have additional questions, Mr. AJ's details will be in the description box, so you can check it out and then reach out to him for further questions. But before we end, please note that your attendance is very important, as you need 85% of attendance to be able to move on to the next stage of this training. So the attendance will be posted in the description box right after today's session. There was a video that was played yesterday, but I think some people were not really, they couldn't see the screen. So we'll work on posting it on our social media handle so that you'll be able to watch it and understand it better. But for now, the description box is basically you scroll down. Since you're on YouTube or on your phone, you can just scroll. You'll see more. So click on more, and then you'll be able to see that information. Um, if you have any other questions, you can still reach out to us on our social media handles. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at NTEEP, and on Instagram, we are at NTEEP Connect. A special appreciation goes to our supporters and ecosystem partners, Nomfro Technologies, Africa's Business, Spirit TV, the Mary Ben Foundation, Novate, Ashuli, Ubuntu Softs, Lost Survey, Ecoya Holding, Women Nice, and Easy Equities. Thank you so much to our amazing supporters, and we'll see you again tomorrow.